Hello, my name is Samuel Cornejo, and my presentation will be about diversity in music, and it will focus on what goes on in front and behind the scenes. Now, to give a brief introduction about the music industry itself before diving into the issue, here's some quick information. So, the US holds the largest music industry in the world. It actually contributes $170 billion yearly to the national GDP, which shows how big the industry is and how much of an impact it has on our economy. So, this also has a global influence, whether that be positive and negative, which I will dive into in this presentation. And it provides many opportunities for work, whether it be the artist itself or whether it's behind the scenes, like a songwriter or producer, and then even in the actual business aspect of it, which is like the CEOs or everyone who goes into basically creating this artist and creating their music and the selling of their music, the marketing of their music, and just creating their brand. And now the issue itself. Underrepresentation within various social and culture groups. I included this study from USC Annenberg, and essentially 70 major independent companies were examined, and this included examining their executive as well as their VP level roles. And out of the executive roles, only 86.1% of the people in those positions were men, and 13.9% were women. And for the VP levels, 119 companies were examined, which included 4,600 executive ranks, and only 7.5% of those roles were filled from black people. I also wanted to include that as of March 2019, 70% of the songs on Spotify's global top 50 playlist were recorded by US based artists. Now, why did I include this? It was to show how big of an influence the US market has. So essentially, we already see a low amount of diversity in our high executive roles in the music industry. And so essentially, there's all the other global markets look at the biggest and most successful market in the world, and they see how low diversity there is in these high roles. And essentially, when you look up to, or when you're trying to compete with a different art with a different market, you tend to mimic or try to essentially do what they're doing because clearly it's what's working and what's selling and being more profitable. So essentially, the U.S. has an ethical role to fulfill, and I would say to essentially be the role model and show what the benefits of having diversity in this role are. And now to speak about the impact that low diversity has on the 4 C's of marketing that we have learned. To begin, I will start with content and show how it impacts the artist. So, first is opportunity limits. Unfortunately, there have been circumstances when artists just have been chosen to come for an event to participate in something just because they're from a lesser known culture, and essentially just to bring in more people, and just to have basically that check mark of, hey, look, we're diverse just because we've included someone, let's say, from Latin America who's participating in an event that's just includes American or US based artists. Also, with stereotypes and discrimination, there have been times where artists have found themselves just facing perceived notions based on their culture or ethnic background, which can be not only limiting to them, like I said before, but it can be discouraging as well. And then also, the effect that this has is with artists essentially just giving up on a certain market and switching to another. And with the example, I have a picture of Tina Turner here. She's just one example of many black artists that basically went through this and had to switch their focus. So she essentially, after I did some research, I found that she wasn't getting much success in the American market and was just facing a lot of prejudice against certain songs and basically wasn't being supported. However, when she switched to the European market, specifically Switzerland, she has described that as her second home, essentially based on the support that she received there in comparison to the American market. Conduit, the impact that this has on distribution channels. Now, if a distribution channel does not have a fair revenue sharing model, this can affect the artist receiving a smaller share of the profits or of the revenue. Another example of an impact this has is when music is incorporated to a market that it is not native in. So, for example, an artist from a different culture, let's say non English speaking or a non Western culture, trying to enter the American market, they can face challenges due to the language barrier or the culture differences because the distributors don't have an expertise in in their native market. Another example is the difficulty that comes with licensing deals. So when a diverse artist tries to secure a deal for, let's say, a film or a commercial or just another form of media, it can be difficult for them due to the lack of representation of people like them or the lack of connection they have. And lastly, the support for diverse genres that are less familiar or popular in mainstream can receive less support from these distribution channels because essentially there's a little trust if that type of music isn't popular today or isn't what's selling. Of course there's going to be essentially a risk to incorporate that genre or to try to promote it because you don't know how it's going to sell. Consumption, the impact on music listening. So one impact that low diversity has is it limits the options for diverse artists on mainstream radio. So this means that artists from underrepresented represented backgrounds may find it challenging to break through these radios and use them as a way to promote their music because if the songs that they create are not pop music or what genre is essentially popular, these radios will not play their songs because it doesn't fit to what they already have on air. And now, with promotion and leadership opportunities, it limits the opportunities for artists to receive this recognition. Without diverse representation in these decision making roles, an artist can struggle to secure the support and resources they need for success. And consumers may miss out on artists due to the biases in these top executive positions. So, this can result in consumers missing out from emerging new talented artists if the people in the position of power find it too much of a risk to promote a newer artist. This causes the the loss in talent that could have made it big and could have had the support of consumers. And lastly, convergence, the impact on technology. Streaming platforms use a specific algorithm, which is what is used to recommend music to users. However, if a certain genre or certain type of artist is favored over another, it can result in the loss of sales of another artist that isn't being represented like another. There's also a lack of response to evolving consumer preferences, which goes hand on hand with the algorithm. So, if there isn't representation in these top roles, in these leadership roles that are used to watch and monitor the algorithm, when the preferences or when the taste of the consumer changes, the algorithm will stay the same, therefore not meeting up or essentially having to play catch up with the preferences of the consumer. So if, let's say, R&B is really popular now, but then later on rock tends to be more popular to the consumer, this algorithm is going to continue recommending R&B, 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 which can result in the loss of sales or people unsubscribing because they see that this streaming platform isn't recommending the music that they would want to listen to. This also has to do with partnerships and sponsorships. Diversity is crucial when creating these partnerships in the music industry because without diverse voices at the table, there can be missed opportunities to create collaborations that can resonate with a culture or just a certain demographic. And lastly, the visual content and media. So this can go with the music videos or just other ways that artists promote. And it's crucial that we have diversity in these roles because if there's a lack in it, it can result in little representation of cultures and experiences that an artist may have gone through that could have resonated with their fans. And now to close off this presentation, diversity has translated into financial success. Whether we see diversity in these top leadership positions is one thing. However, in the actual artists themselves, recently there has been promotion and essentially people are happy to see that there's a more diversity when it comes to the music being released. It allows us to not have to listen to the same thing due to different cultures being involved in this in the mainstream music out today. It also allows for others to see themselves in these jobs, whether that be actually behind the scenes in these top CEO roles or as chairs or even a VP position, as I stated before. When people see that even if there's just a little percentage of their culture, their ethnicity or race, it motivates them to go shoot for that position because they want to see more representation like them and just to break down barriers. And lastly, with the prediction, I believe that music streaming platforms will continue to incorporate different artists from lesser known cultures, and there's going to be a higher accountability on these large independent music companies due to consumers now seeing there's much representation, so that is going to be the standard for them. And there will also be an increased promotion for these lesser known genres now that these streaming platforms are making playlists to essentially promote these genres.